Hello everyone, welcome back. Day 3, Oktoberfest, Road to Oktoberfest 2021. We have another challenger today. Not just any challenger. Yesterday we got a handsome comedian, but this time we got someone even more big time. If you can believe it, someone more big time than Ian. Someone who went to Europe and then won a tournament, showing the strength of CEDH to the entire European Union. It's SickRobot from Into the North, recent champion of Tier 1 Con. But I'm not gonna be talking to Sick today. No, we're gonna jump to our Into the North correspondent from Monarch. Here's Ryan or KQBJ. Off to you.
Hello, everyone. My name's Ryan, also known as KQBJ or Falcon, and I am here with SickRobot, a member Into the North.
Hey, how you doing?
And we're here today to give you a quick deck tech of Timna Thrasios Hermit Druid. Now, Sick, why don't you tell me about what you like about Timna Thras Hermit Druid?
Sure. I've always sort of liked the deck a bit. I actually played with Hermitrid for a while after Flash got banned. I I at the time, and I mean still now, obviously, by the fact that I'm bringing this deck to a tournament, but I thought that it was relatively nice layering. It gave you some nice speed, relatively efficient win cons with like a single card win condition. And then, I mean, you just have a lot of power in the command zone. Thrasios and Timna are almost unparalleled in terms of the efficiency at which you can get value out of the command zone, and they're also just they're very removal proof in that nobody ever wants to point removal out of Timna or Thrasios, so you're sort of just like allowed to get value for free out of them.
Yeah,
So all of that put together really just comes together to make a deck that I like playing, and there are some other reasons, but we can get into those a bit later, I think.
yeah. So Timna and Thras, as said, are an absolutely insane value engine, and even when it might be correct to remove a Timna, it still feels horrible to try
It
to
feels
do.
terrible. Just removing partners in general, especially the ones that aren't combo pieces, feels terrible because, especially when there's two value, value engines in the command zone, it just feels like you're gonna remove one and then they just cast the other one and keep getting cards anyway, and you're just like, well, what did I use my removal for then?
Yeah, like why didn't I just save it for whatever they would have drawn into?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so Timna Thras Hermit Druid is definitely different from Kenrith Druid or Timna Tan or yeah Timna Tana Druid or other or like Thrasfile Druid.
Yeah.
So, what do you think made you choose Timna Thras over those other options?
So I mean, again, definitely part of that reason was the having two value commanders in the command zone. It really helps a lot. It was really just an intersection of wanting to play a deck that had a good mid-range game, had blue, and uh, was still still had relatively good Hermit Druid files and like Hermit Druid win conditions, which sort of centralizes to Thrasios Timna. Kenrith is a bit rough in terms of the mid-range plan. He doesn't really do much to shore up your early game value engines, anything like that. It's hard to get him down early enough without having a hand dedicated to casting Kenrith to start drawing you cards on Thrasios and Timna. And Thras Vial is nice, but again, it's just missing Timna, and Timna is just by far the premier value in the command zone, at least out of the partner pairings.
Yep. And so the recent addition to Hermit Druid decks was the new Hermit from was it was Innistrad Midnight Hunt, correct?
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
It
So
is Malevolent Hermit. Um, what a card.
for
uh,
sure.
yeah, this is definitely a huge reason why I decided to play this deck specifically, or just I guess Hermit Druid in general. But typically the issue with Hermit Druid, even when I was playing it, like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago at this point, and testing it for a while, was that you have this really nice, compact, and like resilient win condition with Hermit Druid. Creatures are really hard to counter. People are tend to be skimping on removal a lot right now. It's not like people just are perpetually in a state of never running as much removal as they should be. I feel like, um, and I mean, it comes down early enough that you can just make it annoying for everybody. And then also, it's a creature activated ability. Not a lot of people are on cursed totems either, so it's a super resilient card on its own. But the issue with it has always, for me, been at least that you need to, after activating Hermit Druid, cast a Dread Return, which unfortunately shares none of those properties with Hermit Druid and is like incredibly easily interacted with. Obviously it loses to like any number of pieces of counter magic that Hermit Druid doesn't get countered by. Um, it's just not super resilient on its own, and that was always the issue that I was running into. So the printing of Malevolent Hermit, and specifically its other side, I think Benevolent Geist, um,
Yeah.
really shored that weakness up and gave you like a full compact WinCon package that's also very resilient to interaction, or at least the interaction that people are playing right now,
Yeah.
which makes it really nice.
How relevant do you think, like, if Malevolent Hermit didn't have as good of a front side, do you think that would change your desire to play the deck at all?
Um, Maybe a bit. I do think that it having the front side is a nice upside, but really the core functionality that we're looking for out of the card is that back half that just like it does so much on its own that like the front could probably be a Darksteel relic and we might still end up playing it. I might still be totally fine with it. It's just yeah, like it's great that if you draw into the card, its front end is both good and also gets it into the graveyard for you to get back later. But yeah, I mean, just the backside of its own is fantastic.
Yep. So, yeah, so that's the core of the deck. Now, you're running, as far as like creatures go, you're running a pretty standard dork package.
Yep, and a
Maybe a
pretty
f- maybe a
pretty
few more than some people would, but pretty stereotypical. And then the rest of the cards, for the most part, are pretty normal. Bloom Tender is an interesting include.
yeah.
Obviously, a very good card, but not seen in every one of these decks.
Yeah, so one of the other reasons why I'm playing Thrasios Timna specifically, and one of the key ideals that I was sort of working with as I was trying to get the deck into a place that I wanted it to be, was that I wanted it to be a Hermit Druid list that, like, while still having a reasonable early Hermit Druid, was also fairly good in the grind game. It had a lot of card quality and stuff that you actively wanted to draw into for longer games. And Bloom Tender is sort of a piece that contributes toward that. It's just, I mean, it's great in, first of all, board stalls when you can't get Timna through. It represents the Thrasios activation every turn for 4 mana. And then also just gives you a lot of mana to work with later on in the game when you're not activating Thrasios, to just be able to cast a bunch of other stuff. Um, Obviously, like with a Timna in play, it also like activates Hermit Druid and pays for most of a Malevolent Hermit activation on its own, which is just pretty awesome.
Yep.
um, and then yeah, I mean, there's a few other typical value pieces. Maybe the only other one that could be considered not a super staple, but definitely getting toward that point at this point is Esper Sentinel. Obviously on Ristic Remora, Sylvan Library, Ristic Study, just the classic set of value pieces. But yeah, I'll definitely adding in some other stuff as well to sort of push more toward having higher card quality. Um, yeah, and then as you were saying, for I guess the creature suite, I am on a full suite of dorks. Everything basically that's not Boreal Druid
Yep.
for this list, but well, and that is I guess we'll talk about that quickly. Part of that is that I want consistent mulligans. Obviously, being able to consistently get to Timna on turn 2 is pretty valuable in these types of lists. It really shores up a lot of mulligans, and like a hand that's a bunch of interaction, one tutor, and then a dork and some lands is going to be enough a lot of the time here, especially just because you can tutor for Hermit Druid get into play, and then you have interaction and Timna to draw cards, and you're just off to a good start. Um, but one of the major reasons why I'm also on a full suite of dorks here is because I'm choosing to only play Narcomoeba as one of my free bodies off of a Hermit Druid activation. I've forgone Fate Stitcher, my lord. And I think there are some other options that people have played historically as well, but I'm currently only on Narcomoeba. That's sort of in the desire of wanting to have the slimmest actual like WinCon package as possible and be able to
Mhm.
fit in just high quality cards. And dorks go a long way toward that because they give you that extra body that you need to flashback the Dread Return, um,
Yeah.
which makes all the difference.
Yep. Playing 25 creatures definitely makes flashing back Dread Return a lot easier than if you were on a lot less creatures. I feel like you'd have to play things like Fate Switcher.
Yeah, I definitely believe that Fate Stitcher is more of a necessity and stuff like the faster or like more, I guess, more hermit dedicated, like Kenrith or Thrasvile builds, where you're doing a lot of layering with stuff like Breach, which really incentivizes you to lean more toward fast mana, and fewer creatures for your value creatures for your dorks, which can make stuff like Face Stitcher more needed, but especially in this kind of deck where I'm playing a full suite of dorks, value creatures, and then, as I'm sure we'll touch on soon, some hate bears as well uh, to try to capitalize on all that stuff.
Yeah. So also I feel like a part of the reason you may not want to play Fate Stitcher is because you aren't on breakfast. Actually, no, breakfast wouldn't even need it. But still, if you were on breakfast, then there's more motivation to be more dedicated towards that combo and towards just being able to go fast because you don't because breakfast is just such dead draws a lot of the time.
Yeah, so I've definitely that is one of the key differences for this list versus other Hermit Druid lists that people have been playing, especially other Thras Timna Hermit Druid decks that people have been playing, is that I'm excluded the Nomads on Core Cephalid Illusionist combo, and instead I'm just opting to basically play Lab Maniac as my second Thassa's Oracle effect, and then the Forbidden Tutors, and then the Hermit Druid package, and that's about it in terms of win cons.
Yep.
Um, it really boiled down to I wasn't finding much of a benefit to keeping them in over having higher quality cards. I was finding that as a backup to Hermit Druid a lot of the time, Thassa's Oracle plus a Tainted Tutor, surprise, surprise, is just a good enough backup, if you even want to call it a backup in this deck. And even outside of that, having a second effect like a Laboratory Maniac that can bypass stacks as well and act as a backup if you've already tried to resolve a Thassa's Oracle, but it got countered, or there's something in play that's stopping it. Um, Having the second effect really, in my opinion anyway, reduces the need for the breakfast combo, which opens up slots to play stuff like the value pieces and stuff like a Hay Bear suite.
Yeah. And also if, for example, someone went you tried to dread return and someone surgical or something like that. That surgical is the first card I think of, even though no one plays it, like Fairy Macabre.
Yep,
Um, the Thassa's Oracle, they also have to be able to hit Labman, or you can just Mem Journey the Labman on top and then play it.
yep. That is part of the reason why I'm on Memory's Journey, is that it definitely the Hermit goes a long way in insulating the deck against one of the historical Hermit problems, which is just counter magic on the Dread Return. But keeping the or the Memory's Journey in, rather, as much as I would want to cut it, it does really help to shore up the other weakness, which is one shot Grave Hate against the deck, especially being able to sometimes do stuff through like a Deathrite Shaman or something to that effect. Again, like Fairy Macabre, anything, or I guess Fairy Macabre. I guess you can still get out of
Yeah,
with Journey. It helps a lot to be able to put a Lab Man back on top or a Thassa's Oracle back on top and try again.
Yep. Yeah. So then we get to your hate bears, which you're playing four of, I believe.
Yep,
Well, four plus, I guess, Ranger
four plus
Captain
some utility
could
creatures. Yeah.
technically be a hate bear, I guess. I don't
um,
know. Ranger Captain's just a good card.
yeah, just nice in general. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really just the greatest hits of asymmetric effects right now in these colors. Um,
Also known
uh,
as four cards printed in the last 2 years.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just a collection of really good stuff, and really helps when you're sort of leaning into the creature tutoring package more to do stuff with Hermit Druid and to be able to find your value creatures and win cons more accessibly. It's nice to have a suite of hate bears and proactive pieces that stop the rest of the table from doing stuff in the cases when you might not be able to win or stick a value piece, but you can certainly slow the rest of the table down with a hate piece instead. Um, Especially with something like Collector Roof, that tends to be the case where if you can land an early Collector Roof off of a tutor, maybe counter magic would get pointed at you, or you like wouldn't be able to stick a Hermitage through a turn cycle. But maybe you can stick a Collector Roof. One of the people at the table isn't as affected by it and wants to protect it, and then you can play 1v1 versus that person with Thrasios and Timna in the command zone. Which I mean, as we all know, I'll just mention again to drive the point home. Like almost unparalleled in terms of value that they provide out of the command zone. It's going up against Thrasios Timna in a 1v1 without a significant amount of card advantage out of the command zoner in your opening hand is sort of a lost battle already. I can't say how many times I've had to do that where it's like, well, I'm gonna keep up for the first two turns and then you're gonna outpace me by drawing like two or three additional cards every turn after that, and I'm just not gonna be able to keep up.
Yeah.
So
Because, yeah, eventually it will hit the point where you have the Timna hit plus a Thras activation every single turn forever.
yeah,
And it's really annoying.
yep.
Yeah.
Um,
One other piece or one other card that's interesting to include is Sylvan Safekeeper.
yep.
And if you want to talk about
Um,
that for a second.
sure. So I would sort of consider this. I mean, part of a like package with Ranger Captain. Although I think if Ranger Captain didn't exist, I'd still be playing Sylvan Safekeeper. But really, I feel I've seen anyway a lot of people cutting Sylvan Safekeeper from their creature combo decks, which I don't super agree with because I've just found it to be fantastic in lists like this. Sticking it just makes a Hermit Druid incredibly threatening, especially now with the Malevolent Hermit. You like it basically shuts off every avenue of interaction with you that most people play on the stack anyway. They can't remove the Hermit Druid, they can't remove the Malevolent Hermit, they can't counter the Dread Return. It just it just strips all the options for people stopping you from winning. And it's also incredibly nice to have with the Hate Bear Suite or Value Suite or anything like that. Just stops people from unlocking themselves. It's also an incredible tutor off of Ranger Captain of Eos
Mhm.
because not just that they're both very obnoxiously good at doing their job protecting your game plan, but Sylvan Safekeeper actually supports Ranger Captain really well as sort of a rattlesnake, where typically the play pattern that you might see when somebody lands a Ranger Captain but isn't in a position to immediately present a win is they'll just hold it up and then like Ranger Captain, like threaten at least Ranger Captain somebody in their upkeep or on top of a tutor or something like that to stop them from being able to go for a win, which makes life very annoying for a lot of combo decks. Summon Safekeeper actually protects the counterplay to that, in that to prevent that, people might remove Ranger Captain or attempt to remove Ranger Captain in the end step before their turn to go for it. Where Sylvan Safekeeper completely stops them from being able to remove the Ranger Captain ahead of time, and then you just get to use it on your own turn at your
Yeah.
leisure.
Yeah, and I've even seen it where people will like try to remove it in someone else's upkeep, so then that person gets Ranger Captain.
Yep,
It's definitely
exactly.
a mess. So
Um,
yeah, so Ranger Captain targets are primarily Safekeeper, I assume, but also Sentinel and
yep.
even maybe a Dork occasionally if you really need it.
I mean, honestly, Deathrite Shaman has been a surprisingly good tutor target for Ranger Captain. I found a lot, especially with people doing stuff like Breach and wanting to like setting up over multiple turns to be able to eventually tutor for a Breach. You just like have a Deathrite Shaman in play, consistently eating their tutors out of their bin or their gas out of bin to stop them from ever being able to land that. And then also stopping, you know, the classic of anybody playing Reanimator just immediately has a much, like, an infinitely harder time winning the game when you have a Deathrite, an active Deathrite Shaman up and running. It's
Yep.
really nice to be able to get that. And also, I mean, yeah, I will admit the deck can be color intensive at times, so being able to find a multicolored dork like a Birds or a Deathrite Shaman can be nice just to fix your mana.
Yep. Yeah. The double white is not simple.
No, not at
So if
all.
you
And there
have
definitely,
double white, you usually have a lot.
yeah, there definitely have been some concessions in the mana base to fit Ranger Captain, to fit a Grand Abolisher in it. But I feel like it's worth it. It just the power that they give you and the flexibility that they give you off of a lot of the creature tutors is just almost unparalleled as well. Just be able to find like defensive to stop the rest of the table, defensive to protect your own win conditions, value, and one card win conditions off of all your creature tutors. Just goes so far.
Yep.
And then I guess
One.
speaking of those tutors,
Oh, yep.
you just walk through them quickly. It's just Green Sun Zenith, Finale, Eldritch Evolution, Neoform are the real ones here outside of the staples, and then Survival of the Fittest, which might be a bit of an iffy one
Yep.
that people wouldn't necessarily think of when they think of Hermit Druid. I feel like people, when they think of Hermit Druid, tend to get locked into the mindset of like, oh, this is this deck just needs to be super like fast or super
Yeah.
dedicated to the Druid plan or anything like that, and don't really consider a lot of the slower cards that you can play and utilizing Hermit as like an efficient one card one con rather than a fast one card one con.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like that's changed a lot more recently though, because of Malevolent Hermit. I think
yeah,
allows you to really feel like, oh, I can play slow. I can play my Hermit, pass it around. I can activate Hermit Druid. I can play a Malevolent Hermit, and you have to have Force of Will, Pact of Negation counterspell.
yeah. And do you have one of those? No? Great. We
Great,
win.
GG.
Um, but there's actually Malevolent Hermit actually encourages specifically survival of the fittest in another sense, which is with the new sort of like configuration of this list, you can use survival as a creature tutor, but when you're tutoring for any creature, you can spend an extra green to cycle through Malevolent Hermit on the way to that tutor, and then you can cast it out of the graveyard during the grind game. And it does come out of the graveyard as a 2/2 flyer that makes your stuff uncounterable, even during regular play, which is incredible both for stopping your interaction from being interacted with, and also just attacking in for Timna for free, basically. So
Yeah, 2/2
it
flyers tend to be really hard to answer.
yeah, so it really like the pretty malevolent herb. It really ups the power of the like survival of the fittest as sort of a value plan in a lot of these games, along with just being like an omni tutor for your creatures.
Yeah. So then we have your interaction suite. The majority of it's pretty standard. There is a swords, and there is a nature's claim, and a force of vigor. So if you want to go over all three of those,
Sure. Um,
swords is
as I
probably
was
the least arguable about that with
yeah,
those.
but that being said, as I was saying earlier, I feel like a lot of people have been skimping on their interaction, and I don't know, like I think it's a quote from Spleenface Morgan that I've heard at least a few times. Is like, how has it been that like for the past 2 years people have constantly been in a state of not playing enough removal?
Yeah,
Like
like what?
it's like for so long people just like it just seems like people haven't been playing enough removal. And I would never leave the house without at least like a one piece of hard creature removal in the deck. So swords is obviously my choice for that. It's just yeah, it's unmatched. It's the best creature removal you can get your hands on. Um, and then yeah, so that's obviously I feel like there's less justification needed. It's just pointing out that people aren't playing enough of it.
Exactly.
These are definitely a bit more controversial or a bit less auto include at the current state of the meta. Um, I have really been finding that um, while this deck functions well into stacks, I found you have a lot of play patterns that can just win through stacks without removing it. There are games where going into a grind game, like pieces start accumulating on board, and it doesn't just stop you from winning. It stops you from like playing the game efficiently or being able to actually generate advantage or cast your spells or get stuff out of your hand.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to just have access to stuff that removes stacks, but also can remove stuff like breach, can remove other people's like value engines, getting rid of somebody's like turn one Rhystic Study the turn after they cast it, and like they spent their entire hand to get a turn one Rhystic Study out, and then you like give them one card, and you're like, okay, now go away, and I don't want to deal with this anymore. Is just super powerful to be able to do. Especially with something like a Force of Vigor, being able to nab somebody's Rhystic Study plus another piece on like the turn after they cast or the turn they cast was really powerful, as well as being able to nab a value engine plus a stacks piece in one go. And it's almost free to play at this point with the number of dorks that you have. You're drawing a lot of extra cards a lot of the time. You're gonna have like an extra dork left in your hand that you don't really want to cast. It's super easy to have the green card in hand for the Force of Vigor. Obviously, you have a bunch of extra creature tutors as well, and some additional like value green stuff that you can just get rid of to the Force of Vigor in a pinch. I've just been very impressed with Force of Vigor recently,
Mhm.
especially for a grindy deck like this that wants to be mana efficient as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. FOV is definitely a very good card. If it didn't have that up to clause, it would be a lot worse.
Yeah, no,
Um,
100%. There are definitely times where you only want to hit one thing,
yeah,
and
but
if you were
there's only
forced to
one
hit,
thing.
like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, enchantments, we talked about survival, everything else looks pretty normal. So I guess we can talk about reanimate a little bit. That's just
sure,
the piece you're choosing to play instead of any other sort of like recursion piece that could
yeah.
potentially be something like a postmortem lunge.
Yep.
Um,
So when I was originally playing with Hermit Druid, I've gone through sort of a second period of testing with this specific list recently to get it up to snuff. When I was originally playing around with Hermit Druid lists for a while, about a year ago at this point, I guess, I was playing with Postmortem Lunge for a bit. I was playing with Shallow Grave for a bit. I was never particularly impressed by either of those. They always felt limiting in what they could do, and while the prospect of having a hasty hermit druid out of the bin was nice at times, I think they were dead enough or didn't fulfill the needs of the slot in the deck enough to really be included in my opinion. um, so that was sort of where I fell out with those pieces specifically. At the beginning of testing with this list, I was actually playing around with replacing those with a Sabine's Reclamation. Um, there are a few, I actually more than a few. I feel like there are a lot of Hermit Druid players right now who are playing Sabine's Reclamation as sort of their secondary backup, like next to like you have like Memory's Journey and you have Sabine's Reclamation as your backups for Dread Return.
mhm.
Um, in testing with Sabine's Reclamation, I really never found a situation where I was actually like able and willing to cast it out of the graveyard to recur the Thassa's Oracle plus something else. It was just never the mana never really lined up. If it was late enough in the game where I could like activate Hermit Druid and flashback a Sabine's Reclamation for like 6 mana in one turn, there were other things that I could be doing instead.
Yeah,
Or like you just cast the Malevolent Hermit, which also like put another like it put a bit of tax on your post hermit stuff in terms of mana. So like having to do that and a Savine's is just like out the window, impossible. And then the case where you draw Sabine's Reclamation, in my opinion, has not really been great. You're not really purposefully putting stuff in the bin that much, aside from activating Hermit Druid. Um, and in the times where I had it in hand and I had activated Hermit Druid, I was not impressed by again still having to spend 3 mana to get something out of the bin there. So, um, what I really found that I think Reanimate is probably the better card for that slot where. If you draw into it, it's really nice because it gives you this extra backup for Dread Return when you're trying to combo. So it actually gives you like faster protected wins sometimes because you don't need to flashback to Malevolent Hermit potentially. You can like try to cast a Dread Return, they counter it, and you cast the Reanimated of your hand to get there anyway. It still gives you like Reanimating Hermit Druid as recursion. It doesn't give you
Hmm.
haste, but that's only again one of the reasons why you'd run this. You can take other people's dock sides out of their bins. You can take other people's asymmetrical hate bears out of their bins. Other people's gilded drakes. Like there's just I'm not typically an advocate of playing a value reanimate, like value reanimate in a lot of decks. But I think in a deck like this, where it both serves as like an important secondary piece for your primary combo, as well as being really good at recurring your primary combo, recurring your like secondary combos, and then also being able to use it as a value case is really it's been better.
Also, being grabbable off of Spellseeker is relevant
Yes, and
compared to Sivians.
I am playing a Spellseeker. It is important as part of the Spellseeker sort of package allotment of things. Um, it's if I wasn't playing Reanimate, the only real recursion that you'd be able to get off Spellseeker is a Noxious Arrival, which, while good, obviously Noxious Arrival serves a pretty nice role in this deck of being another piece of recursion if you draw into it, where you can activate Hermit Druid. If like everything goes wrong and you get blown out, you can still Noxious Revival something back on top of your library, and even potentially go for it that same turn if you have something like a Timna Draw still available or Thrasios Activation still up.
Can you imagine Thras activation plus like 3 more mana to go for whatever combo you're looking for?
Yep. Just and I mean that's part of the appeal of playing a mid range
Oh
list
yeah,
like this, where you can get into those games where you have that much mana left over, sometimes, and then it just makes your life super easy because you just have all of your stuff available to you. You can like try a Dread Return, you can try Malevolent Hermit, you can flashback a Memories Journey, you can activate Thrasios to draw the thing that you got off the Memories Journey again. Like you just so much becomes possible when you have mana and stuff to cast out of the grave. But yeah, Spellseeker is just it's really nice because not everything is answerable through creature abilities. A lot is obviously, but not everything is answerable or is like efficient in terms of mana cost. So being able to convert your creature tutors into tutors for a Spellseeker, which can chain into your real answers for stuff, can be really nice. And then being able to survival for it, obviously great. And then being able to turn, and this is really a big one, is being able to turn 2 creatures tutors into Thassa's Oracle plus Spellseeker is
yep,
nice and powerful. Just lets you assemble the combo completely off of creature tutors.
yep. Well, yeah. Thank you very much for showing this off today.
Yeah,
I
no
think,
worries.
yeah, if you've got any other cards you want to show, definitely can show them now.
Sure. I do have one that I will talk about, I think, which is just Elder Spirit Guide. I've actually seen a lot of people playing Hermit Druid and cutting Elder Spirit Guide, which I think is just incorrect in my humble opinion. It's just, in my opinion, super valuable to be able to either like turn one Hermit or turn one Dork plus Esper Sentinel, Dork plus Dork plus Sylvan Safekeeper, turn one Thrasios, turn one Timna sometimes. It gives you a lot of flexibility in opening hands, and I really feel like even though this isn't really an artifact focused deck, it's playing the main 4 rocks plus Lotus Petal. Uh, so you really want some way to keep up in terms of mana explosiveness with red based decks,
Hmm.
and like artifact red based decks. So being able to have those additional pieces of fast mana, especially ones that aren't affected by Collector Roof, to be able to power out stuff early is just super valuable.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming out and chatting with me today.
Yeah, great. Anytime.
Yeah. Well, back to you, Rebel.
Thank you, Ryan. Really like the deck I saw over here. You know, always like TNT ever since Flash Hulk was a little bonked from the banning of Flash. Uh, it's interesting to see how the deck has developed, and I think seeing Benevolent Geist or whatever that guy's called really brings new life to the deck. Having the Hermit Druid there is really cool. I like Hermit Druid lines right now because I lost to a Hermit Druid, lost to Killstars playing his Tim Natana deck, in the Founders Tournament with a fast Hermit Druid. I just think Hermit Druid is pretty well positioned right now, actually. You can potentially get a really fast win. All the Turbo Nos decks not really playing enough removal to get rid of that Hermit Druid, and you can just activate it and win. So I do like that a lot. I like any deck that can play a survival well. This is definitely one of those. I saw Reanimate, a lot of cool stuff. So very excited to see that a TNT deck is going to be there. Not just any TNT deck, but a TNT deck being piloted by the one and only champion of Europe from Into the North, SickRobot. Thanks for watching. We're gonna finish off with another challenger tomorrow, so stick around. You don't want to miss it. Don't forget information to the event is on the bottom. Bye.